So I hope that you all did get something from your experience today in our different sessions. We like to end our conferences with a nonprofit panel with your colleagues, people who have been in the same position that you've been in, have experienced what you've experienced, and we want them to share their stories with you. We are here today with several panelists from the nonprofit world. We do have one panelist that had an emergency, so he may or may not be able to jump on with us today, but we'll just roll with it because that's what we do. We're a nonprofit. We know how to do that. So my name is Alison Ferlita. For those of you that weren't here earlier this morning, I am the executive director for the Nonprofit Resource Hub. We are a professional association that provides support services, resources, and education to our nonprofit community. As I mentioned earlier, in a nutshell, what we do is make your job much easier so you can keep doing the good work that you do. It's really important when we talk about digital marketing because we have had so much demand. We have over 250 nonprofits within our organization, and we've had so much demand for a conference like this to hear from not only the experts, but our colleagues that are going through it and have gone through it and have successfully experienced the digital marketing from their own perspective. So today I would like to welcome our panelists. We are kind of tight for time today, so I'm going to jump right to it. And I would like to start with Maxine. Welcome.
Hi, Alison. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Hello, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, of course. Maxine Tatlonghari. I'm the Director of Development for the American Lung Association in the Los Angeles market. I also serve on our National DEI Council and serve on the Board of Directors for the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. So got my toe in a couple of different nonprofit spheres. Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Shawnee and Tina, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. I'm Shawnee Knight, and I am one of the co-founders of Filling in the Blanks, a nonprofit that fights childhood hunger by providing children in need with meals on the weekends.
And I'm Tina Kramer, and I'm a co-founder with Shawnee as well. And we've been in operation for 10 years fighting childhood hunger.
Welcome. Welcome to both of you. Thank you. So we are going to start off with Maxine. Maxine, the American Lung Association has partnered with Kaleidoscope.io on various campaigns. This is new territory for many of our nonprofit organizations. Can you tell us what helped you make your decision to invest in your campaigns?
Yeah, sure. It really was the pandemic, I think, that brought that to the forefront. We transitioned two traditional galas, one from the San Diego market and then our Los Angeles market. We partnered to create an online talent show utilizing sports stars. So we knew that if we were going to compete in the online space, that we really needed to make sure our digital marketing component was very strong. And I had worked with influencers before in another capacity, so I just knew that space. I knew the power that they could bring to a project, to a brand, to a mission, to a cause. I had seen it in the product space. So when this transition happened, it was just natural to bring together our existing influencers that we had on the board. We have an actress, Chantel Van Satten, with 1 million Instagram followers. She had been involved for many, many years before we went digital with this program. Tony Gwynn Jr., who's a baseball star and a media star, as well as Kaleidoscope then brought baseball influencers to our table. So really using influencers in a couple of different ways.
So this is, although we were kind of getting knee deep into using influencers to help our causes, it's still somewhat new to some of our organizations. And depending on the size of our organizations and the size of their budget, it really does determine how much they're able to invest, what they invest in. And we just had a session with Nick from Kaleidoscope. Yeah. And I know that you had an experience with him when you brought him on board with you. And I wanted to know if you could share that story with our nonprofits.
Yes, of course. So again, my background was in e-commerce, so I kind of knew how to work with them. But in the nonprofit space with a limited budget, it was very different. So Nick, as an agency, brought a new way of doing that to me. My executive director knew him from her Make-A-Wish days. And so she just kind of knew that we would speak the same language and be able to pivot this event and utilize influencers to their maximum capacity. And it was a really great experience. And I think what I really loved about that, especially with nano influencers and micro influencers, we were able to contextualize that to our board of directors and to our working committees. A lot of them are business people. They may not know the influencer space, but they certainly know an ROI. They know how to look at data, and when something is working, to do more of that. When something isn't working, to pivot. And so tools like the dashboard and Google Analytics allowed us to look at what influencers were working, what posts were resonating, what time of day worked best, what type of content worked. So that data-driven feedback, I think, was really able to engage our board and volunteers and have them activate on their own platforms as well. A lot of them were on LinkedIn. So, and then we would see a really high conversion, although they may not have the 1 million Instagram followers of a Chantel Van Santen or the 45,000 followers of a Tony Gwynn Jr., their 2,000 LinkedIn followers, 200 LinkedIn followers might convert at a higher level because they just are that much more engaged with that person and with their content.
And, I think it also kind of boils down to, it's not just the influencer, it's all of your other networks that are connected to that really help elevate and bring your organization into light, and therefore, developing more supporters. So
Absolutely.
when you've used influencers to increase your reach, do you think, and I think I want to ask more specifically, it sounded like you went through a little bit of trial and error first. And I think that's really important for everybody to understand, is that you kind of have to feel through not only your audience, but who's going to speak to your audience, who's going to resonate with your audience. And it might shift while you're working through that.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably a special sauce for every specific event, or, it may not be the same formula every single time, but
Absolutely.
how has it been working with an influencer? I know that you've worked with some people that have, obviously you said your board member has over 1 million followers, which is amazing, but have you had different experiences with maybe, say, an influencer that has 10,000 followers? And, what has it been like for you?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting about that is the tools are pretty much the same. You have to identify the right person, engage them. Nick talked about that on his session, and then activate them. The activation is really important. So you want to make it as easy as possible for someone to engage with you. They may want to create their own content, which of course is going to be the most authentic. They may repurpose your content. So giving them those tools and really learning how they like to function. Like some of my influencers want me to text them, to remind them. Others like to build out a whole campaign and schedule it ahead of time. So like you mentioned earlier, Alison, everyone has their own secret sauce. Every influencer has their way of working. And it varies year to year, and it can vary week to week, depending upon what the news is, what's going on in that influencer's world. So that's where something like Google Analytics and the dashboard are so important, because you can tweak in real time. So it is a bit of trial and error, but it can be very data driven. So that, I think, gives it a level of comfort when you're making these decisions.
Excellent, thank you. What would you say what is the impact that you have seen on your campaigns when you're using influencers now versus prior to, when an influencer wasn't a thing, back when you started a nonprofit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we went to our digital gala, our first one when we launched, we had a reach of 4 million people. That is something that could not have happened if we were in a traditional room in a traditional gala format. And because it was sports stars, we were able to work with some of the sports figures, really with the goal of tapping into the network of what their teams might be doing, and then using traditional media, traditional PR as well. And then just on a very micro level, we grew our own Instagram account by 35%. So that was
Wow.
another, and I think that's everyone's wondering how they can grow their audience. So with that new algorithms and things like that, being able to grow that Instagram account was really strong for us. And that's a tool we really use in the Los Angeles market. And like I said, LinkedIn was another tool that we really hadn't seen, just working through our boards that are very respected business people, understand ROI, have their own sphere of influence, have a whole network of employees and vendors. So I think measuring all of those components are really important. And that's where a great dashboard comes into play. And then, of
Excellent.
course,
Thank you.
we raised money. You know, Chantel Van Zanten, the activist I mentioned, she herself has raised almost $200,000 over the past 10 years. And so just hard dollars. She's like our #1 climb team in the country. And she generally uses Instagram as a way to communicate with her audience. And then we have just micros that are raising $10,000 and $7,000 and $2,500. So, and awareness.
Well, yeah,
Awareness
well,
is
and we all
huge.
know every dollar adds up, and you
Every
never
dollar
know
adds up.
where, you know, where that $100 donor will one day become $1 million donor. So
And I do,
thank you so
one
much.
last thing, I think that
Sure.
when you have a strong social campaign, it also helps when you go after traditional sponsor dollars. If you can show that you have a built out digital campaign or you have influencers involved, that is something I think that a corporate partner might really find attractive.
Oh, that's
And
a
it
great-
allows you to
great
tap into a
point.
different budget, right? You've got your philanthropy dollars, you can go after marketing dollars, which is a completely different pot of money. So we've found that expands our ability to raise money in the traditional sense.
No, that's so helpful. That's really quite smart. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, John Laurino. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and then if you are ready, I'll be happy to ask you some questions.
Oh, great. No, I'm retired, but I spent 45 years in marketing. But I am a member of a very small not-for-profit, which is a sailing club on Cape Cod that has been around for 73 years. And one of our principal missions is to teach children 8 to 12-ish to learn how to sail and to either progress themselves into a more serious racing program going into high school and college, or just to learn how to do it and enjoy it for the rest of their lives. But it's a quintessential little club down a dirt road in a little clubhouse that was built in the 50s, and we have 20 sailboats, and we run a couple of hundred kids every summer through it, and they all have lots and lots of fun.
And would you say, I know that you worked to use Google Grants, and that was very helpful in you achieving broadening your reach. Could you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, but the headline is that the pursuing the Google Ad Grant is definitely worth it. Our issue was that our expenses are pretty fixed, so we had a lot of excess capacity that we wanted to soak up, which creates a big enough surplus over our expenses to really maintain 24 boats and all the other things that you have to actually go sailing. The headline though is you really have to know your website first. You got to have you have to have a destination that's worth using an ad to get to. So if you don't build the website out and don't really tune it up for SEO, the ads themselves aren't going to be a solution all by themselves. They have to work in concert, and you have to think like a business, even though you're pursuing some noble not-for-profit cause. You have to really think about a business. You're competing for people's attention, and they're going to judge you or pay attention or not pay attention, whether or not your look and feel and your message is as good as the last one, which might be sponsored by Apple. So you don't have to be Apple. You can't be Apple, but you really have to start thinking in those terms.
So what would you say your strategy for follow-up once you have connected through Google Grants? What was your strategy for follow-up to get that significant increase?
Yeah, we had a third increase in our enrollment from when we launched the Google Ad campaign. So, and we're in a very, very narrow space with only really 2 other programs that are within any distance that would be an alternative to ours. but we look at every time we get a student in, we really calculate the lifetime value of that one child, and not only do they come back and progress through the program themselves, but they bring their siblings, and they word of mouth, and so they're worth one class is worth about 6.5. So we keep it. Once somebody comes through the ad program and becomes a family that we can identify, we stay in touch with them on a regular basis. And just to give you an example, we had this big increase last year. So right after Christmas, we went to all the parents. A third of them were new to us. Right after Christmas, and we said, "Hey, we're opening up registration privately for people who have already been here, and we're going to give you 3 weeks before we open it up to everybody else." And we're at 90% of our budget at the beginning of March. So we just drove those people back to us because they're coming up to the Cape Cod, they're going on vacation, they got small kids, and if they don't plan ahead, they're not going to have a vacation. So it's that simple. So we really stay in touch with them with an email campaign that goes on throughout the year.
And would you recommend, I know that you said, it's kind of a no-brainer to do Google Grants. Would you recommend working with an outside agency to really get the full capacity of using that service?
Yes, we did, and I did that in business as well. I mean, I ran a software company for 10 years, and we aggressively used Google, and we still had somebody outside who was professionally managing the program, because it's an iterative process. It's a constant process. You have to know your customer and be able to provide a brief, but the individual who's charged with running that ad campaign is constantly creating new ads and new keywords, and the tool allows you to keep checking them against each other all the time, but it's a constant process. And unless you have somebody who's really computer literate and really wants to devote a lot of time to it, I would argue that you should get somebody to watch it for you full time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Shawnee and Tina, you've been working with Help Good on your social media presence for some time. Can you tell us why you decided to invest in working with them and how it helped you increase your reach to spread awareness about your organization?
Yes. So thank you so much for having me here. So as soon as COVID happened, our events were canceled, and we realized, okay, we need to find another way to fundraise. That is a big, significant piece of our funds that we bring in, is through our events. And, we kind of toyed with doing a virtual event, and then we, really just decided that we want to really increase awareness about filling in the blanks, do ads, and have a marketing company kind of take us to that next level, do our year-end appeal. And I mean, it's an investment, so you have to be ready to do it, but it's really worth it. I mean, they have increased our website traffic by 245%. On social media, they increased 45% just in 2022. I mean, our paid social has grown 14% above what we had before, new lead generation for us. And I think it really helped us out a lot. And that year-end appeal basically covered what one of our canceled events would have raised for us. So it's very helpful, I think, to have a strong presence on social media.
So we talked earlier during Michael's presentation, or he talked earlier during his presentation, and there was a lot of talk about, which social media platform you should target and how, and there is definitely a science behind it. Which social media platforms did you ultimately decide to target?
Well, we do Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And then we do some Google ads. I think the place we see the most success for us is Facebook and Instagram. I mean, Twitter, you know, that has a little bit too. Actually, they've grown our audience there quite a bit too, but I feel like most of the interactions take place on Facebook and Instagram where we are. Kind of like the demographics of moms who support, you know, a nonprofit that helps children. That's our audience, it seems to be.
Yeah, well, I think that's really important too, is being able to identify that. I do want to say before I ask you another question, if anybody who is attending this panel would like to ask a question of our panelists, please put them into the chat and we will be happy to ask them. So, you know, we bring our nonprofits together here for these panels at the end of our conferences because we think it's a good opportunity for you to share some of your wisdom. You know, you've been there, done that kind of thing, and you're still learning. But I wanted to know what organizations similar to the one of your size, Shawnee, if you were to speak to them, what would you recommend they start in building their social media presence? What would be the baseline start for them?
Well, I mean, definitely have social media accounts. That's important. So if you have them, you know, start engaging with your community and, you know, following people and trying to engage with other people that are, you know, in your area that seem to be doing things. Like I noticed for us, a lot of like small entrepreneurial businesses wanted to do something to give back. And so contacting them, even if it was like a pop-up bagel shop and they did, you know, proceeds from their sale, or, you know, so you can start small. But the best thing, in my opinion, would be to hire Help Good, because it's taken a huge amount of work off our plates personally. So that has freed up time for us to be able to do other things.
Mm-hmm. I love hearing that, because I will tell you, just from my own experience as an executive director, you are so overloaded to begin with. So if you know that you can work with an organization or a company that's going to take that off of your plate, but it's going to be well cared for, it is worth its weight in gold. And, you know, oftentimes we are struggling with budget dollars and how do we spend them and how do we get the biggest return on our investment. I do want to, we have a question for you, Shawnee, that just popped up and now it's gone. I do want to ask everybody, just as the panel in general, what advice you would have for nonprofits that are either overwhelmed by their digital media marketing options, not sure where to start, or want to improve their current campaign efforts. And I will start with you, John.
Ironically, even though our whole program is centered around children, we, as a group, philosophically got off of Facebook. And we found that it didn't make any difference. We really, our target audience are 35 to 50-year-old moms with kids like 8 to 12. And so we just started to mimic how they would search for things for their kids to do, and identified them in a way that we just poured it into the ads. I mean, we got dozens of ads, and just basically they're going to search. 80–90% of the searches are in Google, so we're just going to pop up any place that we could conceivably think that you could look for something like us, and it worked. It really worked big time. So, and even if we were a for-profit business, the return on investment was, even if we were paying for the ads, we'd do it again, because for every dollar we spend the ads, we got $3–4 of revenue. So it was a no-brainer.
And I'm not sure if everybody is able to see this, but there is a link to a case study regarding John's experience on geode marketing. You're welcome to take a look at that. Maxine, can you tell us a little bit more about how your board was able to leverage LinkedIn?
Yeah, so we treated them like influencers. We used a toolkit with some of them, which just means everything is already built out for them. They can just decide when they want to post. Others wanted to really identify a best cadence. And I think the number one thing is give them the content if they want it, help them write the captions if they want that, and then have a very strong call to action. You know, so in our first year, we were selling a box to enhance the experience of watching the online gala. So that was a strong call to action. Become a sponsor could be a call to action. So that depends. And then give each of them an identifiable link so you know what traffic they're driving. So that was something that Kaleidoscope offered us, is that every person who was posting had their own link, and we could see who was actually performing best and what kinds of posts were resonating. And then there's a little bit of friendly competition kicks in, just around driving awareness and then driving conversions. So I would say it was the toolkit and then measuring via these personal links.
Thank you. Shawnee, how much time prior to hiring someone did you spend on social media versus how much time you spend on it now?
So we had a volunteer that I would work with, and I probably spent, 15 hours a week working with her, but she was volunteering probably 30 hours a week doing our social media, which, you don't want to burn your volunteers out. You want them to stay with you and keep volunteering. And now I have a weekly meeting that's 30 minutes and then just have to, approve the content and look at the content calendar. It's a huge amount of time that I've been given back.
That's amazing. Oh, that's like every executive director's dream come true. And John, do you think any size organization can benefit from using Google Grants? Are you using your entire budget that you were allotted, or is it more about the quality of the ads that you're getting?
It's the quality. We spent collectively about $11,000 of Google's money per se last summer, the whole year, and we get an allowance of $10,000 a month. So we couldn't even spend the $10,000 if every month if we tried, because we're in such a narrow space. We've really targeted it so narrowly that we're just everywhere we need to be. But like I said, if we were for profit, we'd still do this because the return was just astonishing in terms of the ad cost versus the revenue increase. And revenue is registrations, and the more people, more families that come in, it's like a pig and a snake. Once you get a family, it grows. It just keeps going through the pipeline for 3 or 4 years before you exhaust all the kids that family may have. So,
thank you.
So we're 60 people, and $100 and something thousand budget, and we've demonstrated that it actually really works.
Well, I think what's really important too, and kind of the one of the overarching themes throughout all of our sessions today, is identifying your audience. How do you really identify who your audience is, and then therefore identify those that might be connecting with your audience. So tell me if you feel it's important to identify that audience, and then how did you build out your campaigns around that? I'll start with Maxine.
How did we identify our audience, and then how did we build out our campaigns around that? I will use Champions Unite, our online talent show, because that was sort of a new audience for us. And so we really looked at who were the teams, who followed those teams. When we did some of our ad buys, we did that as an interest. And then when we looked at influencers, there are specific influencers who were creating content around that team. And so that was something that Kaleidoscope helped us with. And so I would say that in terms of new audiences, new eyeballs to our organization around that specific talent show, that's how we approached it. And then we invested around that.
Thank you. And I'm sure it changes again, event to event.
Yeah,
so thank you so much. Shawnee, how about you?
Well, I would have to defer to the marketing company on that one. But I do know that they constantly are changing it and look at metrics and do definitely have things in the back end built where they can see where our audience comes from. And they're always coming up with new and creative ways to find other audience people. It's in their secret sauce.
Thank you. And John, I think yours is somewhat obvious because you have a very specific target.
It was no brainer. We see our customers every week because they bring the kids every day, right? So it's a no-brainer to sit there and say, well, there's a couple of grandparents, maybe an au pair or two, but most of them were the moms, with the kids, and it was they all fit a demographic. So it was pretty easy. And Google Ads now has confirmed that because they give you a demographic they give you a lot of demographic information. There's a little box that shows the age and sex of all the people responding to your ads, and it's, you know, right on the money. I mean, we were right, easy, but Google has confirmed it. We're right on the money in terms of our audience.
Thank you. So we're going to wrap it up with one last question, because I think it's really important for your colleagues in the industry to hear from you. Given that you've now kind of gone through this experience, what is one quick piece of advice that you would share with them? And I will start with Maxine.
I would say, again, it's identify your audience. That's key. And then I'm going to echo what Shawnee said. If you have the budget and the resources to outsource to a qualified agency, do that, because it will help you immensely and free up your time to do other things.
Thank you. Shawnee?
I would just say hire an agency if you have the time and budget, and it does take a lot of work, and understanding the back end of Google can be tricky and overwhelming. And, you know, I did it for a while and it's confusing. And unless you're someone who's specialized in that at your nonprofit, then you need help with it, I think.
Thank you. And John?
I would make sure that your website is not only really reflects your organization, but you keep it absolutely current, because there's no point in having ads that drive people to the website if it doesn't compete for people's attention. And so all you have to do is start to have like out-of-date documents and things like that, and they flick off, they're gone. They just don't think you exist anymore. So, you know, if you're not really real and vibrant on the web, you don't exist anymore. So you got to start with the website before you go to, let's say, and I would use a consultant, because Google Ads and Google Analytics it's like learning Excel, right? So you can learn it, but you have to sit and learn it, and it takes time. And most of us don't have that kind of time. It's really a skill to really make that tool really hum correctly. There's lots of little things in there. There's layers and layers and layers, but you got to get the website right as well. It's the companion to the ads, the ads are really the companion to the website.
Well, it sounds to me like everybody feels like it was money well spent working with the vendors that you worked with. And I know that we may have some nonprofits here that are like, oh, but we have no money. But you can start somewhere. And if it means start small, I always say, don't be afraid to reach out, because maybe you can't buy into a huge package that they offer for services, but maybe there is something that you can pick a la carte that will help get the ball rolling, because it is important. It is becoming part of the very fabric of your organization's livelihood to keep going. Is you have to have this implemented some way. I want to thank you all for your time today. I really do appreciate it. I would like to offer anybody that would like to get in touch with us, or if you have any other questions for our panelists, that you please reach out to me at info@nonprofitresourcehub.org, and I will be sure to connect you with our panelists. Is there any last words that you have before we wrap it up? All right, well, thank you all so much. I really do appreciate your time and your stories and your feedback, and hopefully you have inspired some of our nonprofits out there that are listening to you. And I hope you all have a great day. And I would like to thank everybody for joining the conference today. This was our first digital marketing conference. We will have another nonprofit conference in November on Philanthropy Day, so keep an eye out for that. And please join the Nonprofit Resource Hub if you're a nonprofit. It is free to join, and you will experience many resources, webinars, educational experiences just like this one. So thank you all very much, and I hope you have a great day.